John Nord here. Good to see you guys again. I'm going to show you a little video here I made on making a turquoise ring that's adjustable. This ring is going to be set at about a size 7, and it'll adjust from about a 5.5 all the way up to maybe a 9.5. Anyway, these are real handy when, say, a guy is buying his wife or girlfriend a ring but doesn't really know the size, or someone that wants to wear it on one finger at one time and maybe a larger finger at another time, and you just squeeze these in and out and they become adjustable, and that can be accomplished. So stay tuned and I'll show you how I made this. Okay, this is a 19.5 carat turquoise stone I cut from rough stone and I polished it. It's from the Kingman mine. I'm going to use a 1/8 inch bezel strip. This is a fine silver bezel strip, and it's a serrated bezel strip, excuse me, and I'm gonna form it around this stone with an old burnisher. And when you're forming this around the stone, you want to get it up close to the stone and have all the gaps pretty much taken out of it, but you want to remember that you need enough room to get the stone in and out of the bezel when it's soldered down to the backing plate. So you work it around there, and I usually try to put I figure out I'm going to put the joint somewhere down on the low side. I don't like to put it on turns or in the bottom, but I do it usually on the lower right or left side. But that doesn't matter right near. I'm just marking it, and I'm going to cut it with a pair of dikes, and you want to cut it straight across. If you don't cut it straight across, you can take your sanding tool and straighten it up. Then I'll make sure the ends will butt together properly, and we'll take it over to the soldering table and we'll solder this together after we get it fluxed up. We use handy flux on this. I use the 7-ounce size. It's got a brush and it doesn't dry, well, it does dry out, but by the time it dries all out, it's time to get another one. You can mix water with it and it works, but I haven't been real successful with some old lumpy flux. Anyway, I got a third hand here holding the bezel, and I'm going to use my micro torch, and I'm going to put a drop of 75% silver sorter right on this joint, and that's all you need, and that'll hold it together. I use 75% so none of the other soldering operations will melt this apart. And just get it up to temperature and put a drop there, and we're good to go. Then I take it over, I fit it to the stone, shape it up like I want it, make sure it's going to work. I put it down on a piece of 18 gauge backing plate, and I mark where I want the bezel to set so I can solder it down. And you want to make sure you have enough room for the rope and the bead border if you're putting that around it like me. You want a little excess. You're going to cut that back later. So we got it marked. We're going to flux everything up, the bezel, and everything will get it soldered. We cut this out on our mark so we don't have a whole bunch of excess silver hanging out there. Get it all flexed up, and then we'll set this bezel down on here, and we'll line it up on the marks we had, and we're going to use 65% silver sorter on this one. You use a different percent solder on each operation, and that way your previous operation doesn't come apart, because it takes a little higher heat with the percents of different solders. Now I just add a little bit, and I use that heat to draw that silver solder around the bezel. Make sure you don't have any gaps, and cool it off, take a look at it, make sure it's all down. If not, go back, reflux that spot, and put some more solder in there. You don't want any gaps underneath this bezel. This one looks pretty good, and we'll put it in an acid bath and clean it up. I use muriatic acid percent, like 25%, and water and baking soda. Okay, we've taken some square 14 gauge sterling wire, and I think this is an 8 gauge beaded silver beaded wire also, and we're going to make our border around the bezel with this. And here's what it's going to look like. I've shaped it, I've annealed it, I twisted it with my drill, starting off with just a square one, and I came up with this piece of rope. Then I annealed it again, I formed it around the bezel, cut it to the proper size, I flux everything up, and I put it down on the bezel like I want it. And then I'm going to take some clips and I'm going to hold it down in place so it doesn't move around when we start soldering. And these clips, I show how to make them on my channel, on one of my other videos. You can look through those videos and you'll see how I made them. They're out of stainless steel TIG rod. I sanded the bottom of this rope flat so it sits down on the bezel good, and you don't have anything sticking up off the bezel. It solders down better that way. I just used my sander to flatten it out on the bottom. You just got to get everything fluxed up good, and that kind of sticks it all together too. But I'm still going to use clamps on this, because sometimes when you start soldering, the piece will kind of move around a little bit when the solder is getting up to temperature. So I've got my rope where I want it, and I take the beaded wire and I flux it, and then I'm going to get these clips here like I was talking about, and I'm going to hold them down on that bezel. And I think on this one I'll use a clip on the top bead, clip on the bottom of the rope, and then I'll see how it's set, and I may have to use a clip on each side of the rope too, maybe a total of 4 clips to keep it down where I want it. And these clips just kind of spread apart, and they can sit right down on the wire or the bead, and it does a good job of holding it in place. I'm going to put another one down here on the bottom of the rope. And then I got it over to the soldering table, and I decided to put 2 more on it. Now I'm just start heating it up. I got it on a honeycomb ceramic piece, and I just start heating around that plate, and then I add the solder around the rope and make sure the rope is soldered down all the way around. You don't want any gaps in this rope. And you'll get some solder up on the rope, but you can use a little blue silicone wheel between the turns and get that solder out. And then I cut around the bezel up against the beads in the rope. I cut in and out of the beads to make them real defined. And once I trim it, I take my little orbital and I sand it a little bit around the edges, and then as a final move I take a blue silicone wheel and I go through the rope in and out of the twist to get any solder out that might be there. And I also sand around the edges with the blue silicone wheel, because it kind of polishes up, takes the burrs out that might hang up on clothing or something like that. This is the blue silicone wheel that I was talking about. This one's wore down pretty good, but I'm using it. You can see I can go in and out the twist of the rope, because sometimes there's solder on it, and this gets that solder out real quick. and then I dust it off and it's ready for that. We're going to try to fit the stone, make sure everything works good. Sometimes you have to bend the bezel outwards just a little bit to get the stone down in there. Now if it doesn't fit, you can take your orbital and sand the bottom edge of the stone just a little bit to make it go down better. Once we get it down, we're confident that that's going to work. Okay, I'm going to use a 0.220 by 0.070 pattern wire, and I've got my maker's mark stamped on the back of it. And I annealed this piece of pattern wire. Pattern wire's got a little engraving on it. And I start forming this ring around my dowel. This is going to be a mid-size of 7, and being an adjustable band, it'll go up and down 2 or 3 sizes. And we just twist it around by hand. Then we take our mallet and we kind of pound down the edges of the band, and we get a full twist on it, and we're going to twist it until we got the ends about, I'd say, 1/4 to 3/8 past each other. 3/8 is probably about right, I think. And then you check the size on the dowel and make sure the ring sits at about a 7, if that's the size of your customer that they want. I always ask them, okay, well, what size do you want it to be when I give it to you? They said a 7 in this case, so I'm going to cut it right here where I got about 3/8 off of each end, past the twist, or past the place they meet. You can see here. And I smooth the ends up with the blue silicone wheel to make sure it's all smooth. And then I'm going to take my sander and I'm going to sand the part of the band that's going to sit down on the backing plate. And that way it can sit flat on there. And otherwise you'd just be touching a little bit if you left it around like it would be. So I sand a little flat spot on it right where it's going to meet the backing plate. And once I do that, I'll get my handy flux out again, and I'll flux up the backing plate. I'll flux up the band, and I'll get this all over to the soldering bench, and I'll be real careful to line it up good. Now I've put these adjustable bands on a couple of different ways, but I found that if you put the twist open ends to the bottom of the finger, that's worked best for me, but you can put them in different position. I use a third hand to hold this band down. I show how to make this third hand in my videos on my channel. Check that out. It comes in pretty handy for something like this. It'll hold it right in place. It's made out of a U-bolt and another bolt. I've got it where I want it. I'm going to use extra easy solder on this one. And just all you need is a little bit of solder there where the band meets the backing plate, and make sure it's showing on both sides. Now I got a little extra solder on here, and I'll sand that off, but I've got it soldered down good, and I've got it soldered down where I want it. You want to make sure the ring's going to be straight and everything. Now I'm going to start polishing it up, and I use bristle brushes. I've got several different colors. The colors determine the grit. I'm starting here with a 400, and I just go all over the ring real good. And I took my orbital and I sanded off the solder on the back of the backing plate where I got a little too much on there. And I switched to green, tan, all these different sizes, or grits, excuse me, and I get it polished up real nice this way. Next thing we're going to do, we put the stone in it, and I use my burnisher to go around it and make sure the bezel is up tight and there's no sharp points, and everything's looking good. And we're just about finished with this one. You want to make sure there's no hang-me's on this. Make sure everything's smooth. And there you go.
Okay, we've got the ring completed. Here it is here. It's a pretty, really pretty turquoise stone I put in here. It's got some brown in it. It's a Kingman stone. You can see the band here, how it makes that twist. And this is set at a size 7, but it can, like I say, it can go all the way out to a pretty big size and down to a smaller size. Anyway, it's going to be a real nice gift for someone. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Please like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll keep making videos for you. Thanks a lot.